Joining us right now, breaking new Iraq news, is senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast, Eli Lake. Eli, you were the first person we thought of when we saw things getting troublesome there in Iraq. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real mess.
It is, and the president didn't rule out the idea of responding to Iraq's request for some air assistance yesterday, and the Pentagon as well said that they were looking at this with great concern. What do you know?
Well, at this point, it's a real change in tone, and I think it's driven by the fact that the second largest city in Iraq has fallen to terrorists. On the other hand, we should say the administration didn't want to do this. I mean, Maliki has been asking for months for these airstrikes quietly, and the administration has not said yes. Now, I think at this point, things are so bad that there is a chance for it. The piece that I have today, though, is that if Obama does give the green light, there are bases in and around Iraq where you could have U.S. aircraft or drones flying over and striking targets in Iraq within 24 hours.
Wow, and that is surprising. I mean, honestly, when I was hearing that they were considering airstrikes, I thought that we had removed our footprint and reduced it in such a way that the only way we could do some airstrikes was to move a carrier in there. So I didn't realize we still had those resources.
Well, yeah, there's a base in Qatar and there's a base in Turkey that has a lot of aircraft that can reach Iraq. So in that sense, getting the gear kind of overhead is not the problem. I think the problem is, what do you hit? What are the targets? What the drone strike or the airstrike is the very tail end of a long process that involves gathering intelligence, determining how many people are there, if the strike is going to hit a lot of people. The Obama administration has touted publicly the fact that they have new rules for limiting the number of civilian casualties, ending what used to be known as signature strikes in the CIA drone program. So there's a whole lot of things that would need to be done, and it is true the United States doesn't have the same kind of resources that it did, obviously, before, and the military and the intelligence community believed and wanted to think that they would have access to Iraqi bases after 2011. They never got that. So there is still a lot of work to be done. But in terms of just, the airstrikes, if you see, as we've seen pictures of,
right,
columns that look like military formations now that are associated with the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, then they could be hit.
Well, I have seen other reporting that suggests that we've had drones over Iraq quite a bit lately. Maybe that was the precursor to this, gathering that intelligence.
Well, that's a little bit different, and it's true. That's just purely intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. The lethal drone strikes requires a bit more, and it's true that and the Wall Street Journal had a nice scoop on that yesterday, that there has been these drone flights recently to try to track Al-Qaeda in Iraq, but that kind of stuff, which is just really gathering information. You still need to have, you will need at some point either Iraqis or American forces to collect information and to paint the targets and make sure that these are precise strikes.
Well, you could do a lot of damage. Are there still A-10s in the area? Because remember, we all remember how devastatingly effective the A-10 was.
Yeah, there are A-10s in the region. I don't know whether they're from Al Adid or from Incirlik, but or on the George H.W. Bush fleet group is in the North Arabian Sea. So there's a couple places where they can fly from. I don't know exactly which one it would be, but yes.
And the A-10 is really sort of a target of opportunity aircraft. You don't need a lot of intelligence in that particular case.
No, but listen, there's a bigger problem here. I think the U.S. has great capability to pretty much, to explode you out of the sky almost wherever you are on the globe. But the bigger problem is the United States spent, almost a decade training the Iraqi military so that they would stand up when we would stand down, to use the George W. Bush phrase. They melted away in less than half an hour in the face of, a terrorist organization. that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that tells you, really does tell you, and I say this as somebody who, as a journalist, covered closely, but I did not out and out dismiss the mission cynically that you could build something much better than Saddam Hussein in Iraq. It is very dispiriting, to say the least, that after nearly a decade, the Iraqi military could not repel an assault like this from an al-Qaeda offshoot.
Well, here's what the President of the United States said yesterday.
We do have a stake in making sure that these jihadists are not getting a permanent foothold in either Iraq or Syria, for that matter.
So what is that stake?
Well, I mean, what he's talking about is if there is a safe haven for al-Qaeda in Iraq, and it looks like there's a safe haven now from western Iraq or from Mosul to a lot of Syria, well, then that's the pre-9/11 problem. That means that there's a huge area, a huge swath of territory where al-Qaeda can gather unmolested and plot attacks against the United States and Europe and other Western targets. And that's what he means. That's our stake. We can't allow this group to have a safe haven where eventually, and then have all this money and the resources where they can plot another 9/11.
Yes, jihadist funded by oil money, just what we need.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. But the problem is that the long-term thing was eventually the United States wouldn't have to do drone strikes because the Iraqi military, had all this equipment, all this training. And I think, there's a good story in the New York Times today, but I think the real story here is that, Maliki really deserves a lot of the blame. He allowed for the corruption of that military, and he got rid of a lot of officers who were very good because he was paranoid. He believed the military might be plotting a coup at some point, and the people who were left were very corrupt and very sectarian. Mosul's a Sunni majority city, and so, the people there did not want to fight, did not trust this military, and that's really, so it didn't have the legitimacy. And the soldiers themselves did not want to fight for the officers who were leading them.
All right, Eli Lake, thanks for joining us again. Eli Lake, senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast. Follow him on Twitter, by the way, and bookmark his byline there at the Daily Beast because it seems like every day he's got something new, either on these Taliban 5 or on what's happening in Iraq, and it looks like it's going to be a busy weekend for you, Eli.